Uncle Trump has one shot, one opportunity to stop the death of America. One moment with the freedom of interest. But what DC with, y'all? Vivek's palms are sweaty, six big job gets heavy. There's curry on his sweater already, mom's tandoori. He's nervous, but DOD is getting order ready to drop bombs, cause he gon' got the fat with Eddie. He goes down, DC crowd cries so loud. He opens his mouth, the words you find just come out. They choking now, we the people joking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, blah. Snap back, DOD, Elon, face with gravity. Oprah, bureaucracy, choke, it's so ready. No boast, make it look easy. No, he works at it, he knows he'll push him in. Gotta keep him alive. Stand together. Stop World War III. Make America great again.
And Donald Trump calling out the National Guard unconstitutionally, illegally, without the governor's authorized approval. As Jaime said, that's something that has not happened since 1965. And it's hard to imagine that this time the National Guard were sent out to attack protesters that were exercising their constitutional obligation. Now, I want to say something to you. It is actually in the interest of all American people to stand up for these rights. They know that dividing us is what will make them strong. And they know that when we are united, nobody can divide us.
We executed a search warrant on the individual who was seen earlier this week distributing face shields to suspected rioters down in Los Angeles. We have made it a huge priority to try to identify, locate, and arrest those who are involved in organizing, supporting, funding, or facilitating these riots that they're going on. It appears they're well orchestrated and coordinated and well funded, so we want to understand who these people are and where this organization is coming from. And today was one of those first arrests, the key arrests that we did.
Hey there, I'm George. I drove through the LA riots that happened in downtown. Thank God I'm okay and I'm safe. My car is okay. But I just wanted to show that as I was driving through, and I'm an Uber driver, and I had a customer in my car. My window was open just like about this much, and as I was driving, all kinds of there was an adjustable wrench out of many other things that was thrown at me. It went through this window and hit the other side of the door, not the glass. It was like it almost perfectly went through, and my customer was sitting there, and fortunately didn't get hit by this big adjustable wrench. They threw a bunch of other rocks and bricks at me. It didn't do much damage, but like, there's like just little dents around my car like that. But I'm just grateful I'm okay. And I was just surprised when I went down there, because I was like, I thought it was just going to be a protest, which is, of course, is fine. But, just hitting random civilians' cars. Like I said, I'm fine. I'm not a victim. I'm okay. But for my customer, it was very alarming to experience that and, hear all these, because when they throw all these objects at the car, and it was very loud and very, jarring. We were right beside City Hall. There was a big police barricade. They were protecting City Hall, but I just had to drive through it. So I was quite surprised.
Good day, Patriots. My name is Anastasia Theodoropoulos. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Richard Panzer. Frank Scavo is out on assignment. Today we have a very special guest with us. He is the senior editor of And Magazine, the author of 6 books, and you probably recognize him on a very special show, Steve Bannon's War Room, among other shows. He is also a retired CIA operations officer and former U.S. Army officer, former president of Pennsylvania Patriot Coalition, and current leader of the Unite PA, a patriot group based in Susquehanna County, PA, Mr. Sam Faddis. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So, quick question. There's so much going on this week, so much action, and with your background, you may know a thing or two. As a former CIA operations officer, what can you tell us about what's going on with the LA riots and what the real purpose is? Because this does not seem organic.
Yeah, well, we could start there. It's not organic. It strikes me all the time that language theoretically is supposed to illuminate things, right? We use language so you understand what we're saying. And increasingly, the left uses language to obscure, at a minimum, what's going on and essentially misrepresent. So where am I going with that? These things get called protests. Well, they're not protests. These are riots. They get called organic, spontaneous. This is an uprising. The idea is you're supposed to assume the average American is outraged and just decided to go out in the street and start burning cars. That's not what's happening. There are very large organized groups behind this. They got a lot of money. They have a very explicit agenda, which is a Marxist-Leninist agenda. They want to overthrow the political, economic, and social order in the country. And when I use the term Marxist, I'm not just using that because it sounds bad. I'm using that as a guy who spent a lot of his life working against Marxists all over the world. So I mean it in the most literal sense. These are revolutionary organizations. And you can see that very, very clearly. I mean, when you got guys jumping up on cars that they've set on fire waving Mexican flags, and you have very explicit statements now that the intent is that any state that used to be part of Mexico now should be an independent republic, and this is occupied land. And I mean, really dramatic, revolutionary statements. This is not just, we think you're being mean to us and we'd like you to be nicer, right? So it's an insurrection, to be clear, which is exactly what Donald Trump has said, and he's precisely right. That's what's happening. It is an insurrection.
I thought the Marxists want to establish a workers' paradise, a world of equality where there's no exploitation, and it sounds very aspirational.
Yeah, it all sounds really touchy-feely. I mean, again, as somebody who's had the great misfortune of having to read a bunch of Marxist-Leninist crap and also spend a lot of time in the company of Marxist-Leninists, revolutionaries in lots of country, it's all a lie, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's where it's all going to be kinder and gentler, but it's, you ever see a communist country that was kinder and gentler? I mean, North Korea doesn't strike me as a touchy-feely place to live. A lot of their rhetoric is contradictory And if you try to actually make sense of it, your brain just hurts when you're all done. But the fact that, I mean, the key element here is you're talking about burning down the system. That's politically, economically, and socially. That's the goal.
So do you think they want a reaction? They were happy when Trump sent the National Guard out because that shows that he's a fascist dictator. I mean, there's a narrative, action, reaction.
Yeah, well, they will 100%. That's going to be their response. I don't think it changes the fact that, in my opinion, the correct response is you stomp on them.
Right.
And I don't mean that to sound silly, and I don't mean for innocent people who are not involved in violence to get hurt, but the fact is, when you've progressed to the point where you're looting businesses, burning cars, throwing big chunks of concrete at police vehicles, this kind of thing, then the response ought to be pretty significant. I mean, we should not let them rampage.
So there are organizations, going back to what you said about what their missions are and that touchy-feely. There's an organization right now a lot of folks have probably heard about called NoKings.org, and their mission statement says, No Kings is a national day of action and mass mobilization in response to the increasing authoritarian excesses of corruption of the Trump administration. We've watched as they've cracked down on free speech, detained people for their political positions, threatened to deport American citizens, and defied the courts. They've done this all the while continuing to serve and enrich their billionaire allies. They think they rule, but we are bigger than ever of their worst aspirations. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, it's garbage. To use a technical term. I mean, look, we're at that point in history. Let's just speak plainly, right? Let's stop dancing around things. Indivisible is a really perfect example of what I was talking about large organizations. I'm glad you brought it up. Indivisible and this whole No Kings Day and all this stuff. They portray themselves as being a confederation of grassroots organizations. This is Mom, Apple Pie, Chevrolet, average Americans fighting for liberty, justice, and the American way, all the usual nonsense. Okay, again, that's garbage. That's a lie. Indivisible is a very large, very well-funded organization. It's run out of Washington, D.C. The two people that run it are professional agitators, paid very well. It has existed since at least 2016, dedicated to the proposition of opposing Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. So the last big event before No Kings Day, just to give you a flavor for their politics, was May 1st, May Day, the communist holiday. That was their last big organization, and that is, again, expressly their ideology. And anybody who doesn't believe that or thinks I'm exaggerating, well, look, you can go on the internet. They have a very big glossy website because they got a lot of money. And then you can very easily do your own research. At Ann Magazine, we've written extensively about these guys. And anytime we write, we give citations. We're not just making this up. Okay, this is who they are. They have massive amounts of money, and their agenda is to create a Marxist-Leninist state in the United States.
I think most people are recognizing, though, look at where all this crisis is really happening. You have Democratic-run progressives running Los Angeles with their Angelenos and their passionate pleas of nonsense and the media is completely complicit once again, because that is part of the Marxist movement. You control the media, you control the narrative. But I think after looking at our election map in 2024, I think the gig is up. Most people inherently recognize that this is not right. This is not the America. They hate America. They're trying to take over. And seeing what else is going around the world, it looks almost like a plea of desperation. Like they're so desperate to try to fight against the Constitution and the America of a smaller government, which Trump has been trying to do in cleaning up, and DOJ and all of that. And it's our taxpayer money that a lot of these organizations
right.
have been funded with.
That's right.
So they sure they don't want Trump and they don't want Doge, but how do we go further and stop this? Because we can't have this every couple of months going on and people getting hurt.
Let me just, before we go into the response, there's a billionaire, China-based billionaire named Neville Singham.
Yes.
Who apparently funds the Party for Liberation and Socialism. And do you have any comments about people? I mean, I don't think people really know. I mean, people know about George Soros more. I think he's more well known, but.
Right. So, I mean, to take that question first and then come back to how we combat this. Right. He's a perfect example of what I'm talking about in terms of funding and large organizations, okay? These groups, I spent a long time in the world of intelligence, right? There's a concept known as front organizations. You got a name and you got a face and you trot this out to the public. And often the purpose of that is concealing what's really going on, right? So again, like with Indivisible, if you look at their website, they will have this endless list of supposed local organizations that all just magically all got together and one day decided to fight. And again, that's garbage. Half of them don't even exist, and if they do exist, it's a post office box and a person. It is a front to give the impression that this is not just a handful of people with big money with bad intent pushing this thing. Okay, Singham is this guy out of China, made zillions of dollars in our capitalist economy, but now wants to burn down the society that made him rich. He operates out of Shanghai, China. And his wife runs an organization called Code Pink that is unbelievably radical. So these people are total revolutionaries, completely in bed with the Chinese Communist Party. And again, I'm not using that as like a throwaway line. I'm telling you that's for real. And this guy is pumping massive amounts of money into these groups in the United States. So clearly with at least the permission of the Chinese Communist Party, and one would presume with more than just their permission. That's real. That's not like somebody made it up. So what do we do? Look, I think we push back. We are vigorous. We refuse to keep our mouths shut. I'm not talking about anybody going out in the street and shooting anybody or violence. It's just we've had enough, guys. We're not mincing words. We're not playing your game anymore. You're trying to burn down the society, and we're going to call you out. You're setting fire to Los Angeles. Yeah, the National Guard's going to come in, and the cops are going to come in, and you're all going to jail. We're not going to watch while you do this. And we're not going to be hesitant about just saying that you are lying and talking about reality. So in the run-up to the last election, as you know, the coalition, the Pennsylvania Patriot Coalition that I was then president of, we spent a lot of time in a variety of places, which are not really traditional Republican neighborhoods. Did a lot of work down in Philly, but individually, I spent a lot of time in Hazleton. Okay, Hazleton, once upon a time, 75 years ago, was mostly Italian American. It's now roughly 70% Hispanic, and most of those people are Dominicans. Okay, we spent a lot of time down there working with those folks. What'd you find? You found American immigrants who came to the United States because they wanted to be Americans, because they believe in everything that the United States represents. And somebody in some Democratic left-leaning organization wants to call them brown, whatever that means, and therefore dictate that they have to act a certain way. And their response was, like hell, I'm not going along with these lunatics. I came here to build a new life. I'm proud of what I'm doing. I'm proud of being an American. So we didn't go down there and have to convince anybody of anything. We went down there and linked up with a bunch of groups that were 100% in support of Donald Trump. Every precinct in Hazleton proper went right around 70% for Donald Trump.
Really?
And the more you got into the center of the city, which is almost all Hispanic at this point, the higher those percentages were. So somebody afterwards wrote this description, I can't remember who it was, saying, you know what Trump has done? He's created what they call a multi-ethnic coalition of working people. These folks, you know, they don't care about this black, brown, white nonsense. We're Americans, and we actually work for a living. We, by the way, fight all your wars. We pay all your taxes. And we're tired of this garbage, man. We're going to stand up. And they did. Again, we did not go into Hazleton and have to like convince somebody. We showed up, and about 15 minutes into the first meeting, we were like, let's do this, because we realized we were all 100% on the same wavelength. So I think that's why Trump's in the White House, and we just, the people on the other side, again, do not want you to recognize reality. So they just keep lying. This is all about white people and racism and Nazis and all this junk. You're like, man, if you're standing in Hazleton in a room filled with all folks who all came here from the Dominican Republic, and by the way, they're all businessmen, entrepreneurs, they're all working like, and nobody's taking a friggin' handout from anybody. I mean, what you see are the same thing you would have said talking to Italian Americans 1920, 1930. I came here for a reason. So you see that the reality could not be more different.
You know, this is interesting to me because under the Biden-Harris administration, they were flying people into America in the middle of the night. I don't know the exact numbers. I believe it was 10 to 15 million people came across through various means, and sending them to states that they thought, I guess, they wanted to change the demographics of certain states, and their plan, if Trump had not been reelected, probably we'd be. I mean, I'm just curious. What would this country be like if Harris was president? What would be happening right now? I'm curious what you think.
I think everything that was happening under Joe Biden, but on steroids, man. And the thing is, you know, again, I get it that many people, if you will, sort of on our side of the aisle, understand that a Democratic-run city is typically kind of a hellhole and going to hell in a handbasket. What they don't understand is that there are a lot of people, I'm not branding everybody who votes Democratic this way, but I'm saying there are, in fact, very powerful and in many cases very rich people on the left who, they aren't just incompetent. It's not just that they don't know how to run a city, although there's plenty of that. But there are folks like this guy we were talking about operating out of Shanghai and plenty of other people who they know exactly what they're doing. It's not just they're doing a bad job. They want to literally burn down the system. And by that, I mean, let's just be clear. One of the biggest organizations involved behind all of these alleged protests, which are always riots, is the Democratic Socialists of America. Again, if you're watching, they're everywhere. And associated with them, a group called the Freedom Road Socialists. Okay, and you can go online, you can research this all yourself, go to their website. They're crystal clear, man. If you're reading their website, you're reading the Communist Manifesto. I mean, literally, that's what you're reading. The end of capitalism, the end of any semblance of a constitutional republic. This is not about be nicer to me or working around the margins. This is literally about burning the system to the ground and creating a communist nation.
Now,
Well, going back to what you said, because I want to finish your point, because we had all of these illegals being flown into cities that were democratic, but it wasn't just to disrupt, it was about power. You had states, democratic states, where masses of people were moving out. You had 300 families a day moving out of New York, and they're going to lose power when they lose those seats, when they can't count bodies, not citizens, because they took care of that with the census. So if we don't see that for what it is, this is a power struggle to recapture some kind of power, and because they've lost, and they cannot run on policies.
No. You're exactly right. So you buy You fly people in illegally, as I would draw a big distinction between those folks who have come here legally to become part of this country and the kind of folks that they have brought in here illegally. And then you're essentially buying their votes because what are you doing? You flew. I mean, even if you turned yourself in at the border, what happened? They took you to a place to get a hot meal and a hot shower. They gave you a plane ticket. They flew you to the city of your choice, and they put you up in a hotel at taxpayer expense and started handing you vouchers and started and paying your bills. And, okay, so what are we doing? We're doing exactly what you're saying. This guy is going to support us however we want him to support us for all time, right? We brought him here for that purpose.
You know, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around what kind of party is a Democrat Party? I mean, I'm just trying to understand what political party would want to, I know I'm sounding naive right now, but what kind of political party would want to do the things that you're talking about?
Well, I mean, I think you're talking about a party that has been captured by the far left, right? I mean, my grandfather, who was a congressman down in southwestern PA back in the 30s, early 40s. Okay, he was a Democratic congressman. All right, what was he? I mean, he ended up having a very successful life. He became a congressman, left the military as a colonel, et cetera. Along the way, he worked in the mines. He farmed, and by farmed, I mean he farmed to feed his family. He built roads, and I don't mean he had a company to build roads. I mean he did the manual labor to build. In other words, he was a working man. Doesn't separate him from millions of other people, but that was who he was. And to him, the Democratic Party was the party of the working man and woman, and that's why he supported him. Okay, well, I guarantee you that if my grandfather, Charles Isaiah Faddis, was alive today, he would say in his usual very direct style, I don't see a Democratic Party, I see a Communist Party. I don't know what this is. This has nothing to do with the party that I used to be part of. People say all the time, can you imagine John F. Kennedy running as a Democratic candidate, a war veteran, right, who was not supportive of any of these policies?
Would you agree that, we know about the Overton window, right? And this has probably been going on for over 100 years, where the powers that be have been slowly trying to move to the left, to the new norm. I'll take a perfect example. New York City in 1970, you could carry your rifle on the train to go to school, where you had a class where you learned how to clean your rifle properly and take it back home. Boy, did that change. Okay? So I think correct me if I'm wrong on this, but this is my theory. President Trump came in, shocked the world in 2016, and they had no choice but to speed up that Overton window. And when they did that, it really woke everybody up to the reality of what's going on, because you can't do it like that. It's too shocking, it's too disruptive, and even with the media, well, what happened? Now you have all these great podcasts. You have you pick and choose a la carte what you want to hear when you want to get your media.
Absolutely.
And I keep saying to myself, well, this is Trump's greatest gift. And then I keep looking at other things, and I'm like, he unveiled everything for us to become more empowered, because we were losing everything. We were becoming complete slaves.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, to me, everybody talks about Donald Trump, and obviously he is the president, he's the leader of the MAGA movement and so forth. But the MAGA movement is, I mean, this is the thing that Democrats don't get. The MAGA movement is not Donald Trump, right? Taking nothing away from the man. The MAGA movement is the American people. And I've always said that really what Trump did was just start saying out loud what everybody in the United States, or most Americans, had been saying to themselves or privately for a very long time. It's like he sort of just put a well into this magma chamber of resentment, like, we're just fed up, man. We can't, with all of this. It's a mortal threat to the far left, right? The American people actually waking up, taking back control of their own lives, and the Republic is the death knell for their agenda. So yeah, 100%, you got to get more aggressive. You got to move. You got to move faster. Why? When you get to the point where you're trying to imprison Donald Trump, as they did, you're trying to depose him from within, deep state operatives, as they did. First trying to keep him out of the White House, then trying to essentially stage a coup. Then when he's out of the White House, they're trying to bankrupt him, imprison him. My friend Steve Bannon goes to prison, right? A number of other close advisors of his are in prison. That's pretty crazy when you think about that. It's like, are you kidding me right now?
It's not the America we know.
You have now stepped totally outside the bounds of any norm we have had for centuries. You're now literally, I mean, you know how many people we know in the Patriot movement in Pennsylvania who they have come after, tried to bankrupt them, tried to destroy them, tried to imprison them.
Our colleague Frank Scavo.
Frank, yes, and other folks, you know. I can think of moments over the last 3 years when literally, because of the activity of the Patriot Coalition, which has never come, we've never come within a mile of doing anything that's illegal. We bend over backwards to, you know.
And we bring our kids. We're not going to do anything.
You show up at an event. It's children, it's families.
And American flags.
The 5-year-old terrorist.
Well, or you're
standing
on a street corner, as I was at one point down in Hershey when they were sicking the Teamsters on us. And I look around, and 75% of the people there are female, and the average age is probably 55 years old. Wow, this is really the shock troops here. I mean, they are the shock troops in the sense that they're the ones with the courage and the guts to show up. Right. But come on, does this look like a group of people that came here to physically assault you? That's not what's going on here. Now, they will stand their ground, and don't discount them, but the point is, these are not violent extremists at all. All they are is Americans. And in the course of, you know, all of this activity, there are times when my wife and I have had, over the last couple of years, had this conversation at home, which is, okay, so if the FBI rolls into the driveway and you are arrested tomorrow morning, where's the power of attorney, and how we, and that's pretty, I mean, you do, you know, okay, whatever. We do that, and we've lived pretty crazy lives, so that seems normal to us. But the point is, it's not normal, right? All you're doing is speaking your mind as an American citizen, and you're actually thinking. I mean, I actually had a T-shirt made that my wife, Gina, doesn't like because she thinks I'm tempting fate, that I would sleep in, that says on the front, "Good morning, FBI, Trump won." And on the back it says, "If you're all special agents, that's not very special, is it?" Because I figured if you're going to perp walk me out in the driveway having called CNN, at least I'm going to get a laugh out of this as you show the video. And again, Gina's like, tempting fate is not, you know. That's, maybe you're pushing it a little bit. Okay, whatever. The point is, that's not okay, right? I mean, it's not okay when Steve Bannon goes to prison. What was his crime? Just saying, I'm not going to bow to you. I'm going to actually stand up to you. What's the real reason I'm going to prison? Because you think I'm too dangerous to you, in the sense that I actually talk and encourage.
They try to destroy Alex Jones. Anybody who had a huge megaphone.
They try to destroy anybody. Right. I mean, and some of the stuff they trot out is insane. I mean, Donald Trump along the way apparently raped a woman in a dressing room in a department store in broad daylight. The guy who can't move in New York without being recognized somehow did this and nobody noticed. I mean, come on, it's madness.
So I guess it wasn't normal that I went to my office one day and I was checking my Wi-Fi connection, and one of the Wi-Fi options was FBI car number 4. Yeah, I don't think that's probably really normal.
Okay, look, just to play the devil's advocate
yes.
here, my nephew, who graduated from Cornell University and is teaching in upstate New York,
right.
He thinks burning down Waymo cars is perfectly fine. There's no problem. The educated, the young people who went to the Ivy League schools and UCLA and University of Michigan, they think that's okay.
Right.
Because they were triggered.
Yeah.
So
Don't trigger me.
I mean, what are we going to do? I mean, I'm sure they were recruiting people for the CIA, the FBI from some of these universities.
100%.
And now those universities are basically the breeding grounds for faithful Marxists.
Look, what I always tell people, and you guys have heard me say this kind of thing, in the context of patriot work in Pennsylvania many times, is you just stand up and do what you can where you are with what you have, which is a Teddy Roosevelt quote. Right? In other words, stop waiting for somebody else to do it, but also stop thinking that you have to find the silver bullet and go fix the whole system by yourself. Just find what's in front of you and do it. So if it's this local school board and the school board is pushing what amounts to pornographic material on your kids in elementary school, then show up at the school board meeting and raise hell. Again, I'm not talking about violence, but just stand your ground. And if those school board members won't stand up for you, throw them the heck out and replace the school board members. And just have that approach at every level. We're not sitting passively. We're not just going to complain. We're not just going to talk about it. But nobody else is going to do it for you, but also you don't have to do it alone. We all just, when you think about the way the Republic was designed, it was supposed to be mostly, to the extent there was a government, at the local and the state level, part-time, like citizens part-time serving, legislatures, even at the state level, were not full-time. And everybody participated. It wasn't just you voted for the school board person, but you also took your turn on the school board, and you showed up at every school board meeting and every township meeting and right, that's the way. And then along the way we got lazy, and I'll include myself in this.
Complacent.
Sat down on the couch, opened a bag of Cheetos, turned on the game, and somebody else is taking care of this. Yeah, well, they are. Somebody else is taking care of it, but not the way you want them to take care of it. So get back in the game. Took a long time to get here. We will not dig out overnight. My biggest concern, honestly, on this front is the people who think because Donald Trump's in the White House, we won the war, it's all over, and everything's fixed.
Let me ask you on another issue. You have protesters saying free Palestine. There seems to be a mix of, there's the immigration issue, but then there's the free Palestine. I'm just curious and the violence against that couple, the Jewish couple at the embassy in Washington who were murdered by a leftist, right? So a leftist. Can you talk about the connection between the leftist cause and the free Palestine issue?
The way I look at it is it's like a witch's brew, right? Yeah. It's not one or the other. It's like this toxic mix. Right. So you got at this point, we've got folks in Los Angeles rioting who seriously say 8 U.S. states should become an independent country and break free because somehow, well, I don't know, because they don't understand history, but anyway, that should happen. And we've got black nationalist groups that claim there should be a black homeland, and then we've got people who either don't understand what Hamas is, or they do understand it and they're just evil. And then we got communists, and then we've got the communist Chinese pumping money in, and all of what's the common denominator? They all want to destroy the republic. The Hamas thing, having spent a big chunk of my life working against Islamic extremists, the idea that you express solidarity with a group that wants to commit genocide, annihilate everybody in Israel, and literally walked into a music festival with machine guns and mowed down teenagers and young adults who were dancing. By the way, the music festival the theme of it was peace and humanity and brotherhood. It was that whole sort of getting past conflict in the Middle East, and the response of Hamas is to hang glide in and then machine gun children on a dance floor. And now we got people in New York City who think they're on the right side of something, passing out pamphlets using that symbol of a hang glider as a logo, celebrating mass murder. So, I mean, that's, and then maybe my personal favorite, the trans people for Hamas, which is like, I don't think you.
Do they have a suicide?
I don't understand. I don't think
know.
you understand anything about Hamas or the Middle East, or that you think that they wouldn't talk to you. They wouldn't get a chance to pass out a leaflet in Hamas-controlled
You'd be
territory.
thrown off a roof.
You'd be thrown off a roof if they even took the time to take you up there. They might just kill you in the street and drag your body down the road, which is.
And maybe that's why Trump hit so hard on Harvard.
Right.
Because these are not coincidental things.
No.
There's a lot that needs to get done. So why was that on the forefront? And I think now in retrospect, it's a warning to the universities. You better straighten out your act. Look, even Harvard.
Yeah, but the amount of money coming from Qatar and some of these countries into Harvard and Yale and all these universities, there's a lot of money involved. But thank God he's doing something.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because it was something that I meant to say earlier when we were talking about Los Angeles, right? I'm all for the fact that if you got people in the street who are looting things, burning cars, in other words, this is not a peaceful protest. This is, at a minimum, a riot, closer to more like an insurrection. Okay, you ought to be arresting those people. But we shouldn't, in my opinion, just deal with this as we're going to arrest the guy who's throwing rocks in the street. Because, again, there are really powerful, well-financed organizations. Okay, well, when you're financing violence and supplying people with equipment and organizing violence, you yourself are guilty of criminal activity. So, in addition to LA cops arresting folks on the streets of Los Angeles, people like the FBI need to be tearing out the groups behind this by the roots. In other words, those guys that are behind this in the groups that are organizing in Los Angeles ought to be themselves being led away in handcuffs and charged. Okay, there are very clear federal crimes here involved. You're raising money, organizing, getting people out in the street and deliberately directing them to commit violence, attack federal buildings. Okay, guys, there's a whole bunch of crimes there. So you're going to go to prison now. And this is not going, and your funds that you have raised, all these hundreds of millions of dollars, we're going to seize all this money. Same as in dealing with the mob, right? Okay, this guy shot somebody and you arrest the trigger man. That's cool. That's not the end of the game. The end of the game is when the Don himself goes to prison and you seize all of his money and you shut down the whole enterprise. That's how you get rid of it. That's how you deal with this.
Well, here's the other thing, which is very interesting. We see Florida and DeSantis and the way they're handling these potential riots that may be occurring or insurrections in Florida. And their approach is very different than the approach we've seen in Los Angeles, which is you come here, you hurt an officer, you spit on an officer, well, you better make sure your family knows where to pick up the remains. It's not allowed. And I'm curious to see over the next few weeks how that approach is going to help Florida and how different approaches, like in California, have led to other things. But people are watching. I think that's the important thing, Sam.
Yes.
And noticing the difference. And here's the other thing, we talk about sometimes, we see good people leaving a purple state or a state that's turned blue because they recognize they can't raise their families there. So they're going to states like Florida, they're going to Tennessee, they're going to Texas. And it seems like a lot of the states are also being segregated. Do you think that's a good thing? I mean, for people to get organized and leave? Listen, if you have to leave, go somewhere where like-minded people get organized.
Well, I mean, look, ultimately, you're talking about your family. You should do what you got to do for your family, right? I get it. Is it sad for places like New York? Sure. I mean, I've never lived in New York, but I've visited the city many, many times. It's a great city, right? I don't want to see New York in the condition that it's in. You were bringing up Florida. My prediction, you are not going to see anything remotely resembling Los Angeles in any city in Florida. That is not going to happen. And we could go through a whole swath of the United States of America, where there are some substantial cities, and say with absolute confidence, I'm not saying some guys won't get together and try to burn something on a street corner. I'm just saying nothing will happen on the scale of Los Angeles because, like you've pointed out, the second it begins to happen, somebody is going to stomp on it. And by stomp on it, I mean obviously legally, but I mean the point is we don't tolerate this here, man. You're not going to take a whole big chunk of the city and turn it into a war zone.
Yeah, I mean, in 2020, I believe this was Minnesota, they waited 5 days
Yes.
to do anything. They let them rob, burn, and destroy for 5 days.
Yeah, our good buddy Tim Walz. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he refused
Tim.
he refused to call in the National Guard. When the National Guard did get called in, his daughter kept calling the protesters to provide them with the inside information on the deployments of the National Guard.
really?
Now think about
Wow.
Now think about that. Because you got men and women risking their lives, serving their country on the street in a dangerous situation. So you're providing information to the guys on the other side that could potentially lead to death of somebody. And just as a kicker, Governor Walz's wife made a point of telling everybody afterward that she kept the windows open in their house so she could smell the city burning.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't make that up. Now that's kind of creepy at a minimum. It's like, really? Because those are people's lives you're smelling, right? That's
Right.
some guy and his wife worked 75 years to build that business,
Right.
and that's everything they've got, and it's all going up in flames by these guys burning it to the ground. And you think that's cool, I guess? I don't know what that means.
I guess I'm not surprised they honeymooned in communist China and how many times Waltz went down there and it wasn't for assignments.
No, that's right.
So, you got to look at someone's history and, if they walk the walk, guess what? You got to call it for what it is.
He's a guy who thinks that the communist model is something we ought to really study and emulate, right? Okay, well, I don't think so, bud.
So here's my other question.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
saw this great election, especially here in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
where it made the world a difference. We came through for the conservative values to bring back our country back to where it needed to be out of chaos. And then we just had another election, and we had 18% of Pennsylvania show up to vote. We have and that was for judges, okay, for the primaries. Now we have another big election November, and we need people to come out. And my fear is, because this is happening everywhere, right, there are elections. As you had said poignantly before, they think Trump won, now you don't have to do anything else.
That's right.
What can you tell the people? What do they need to do for this election, especially if you're in Pennsylvania, the key state, the keystone?
Yeah, well, what you have to do is understand that what happened was we won a battle. We did not win the war. And you've heard me use this analogy before, right? After Trenton, after they crossed the Delaware and the Hessians were defeated and blah, 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 and it's morning and everybody's pumped because we didn't even lose a man, and the Hessian, we've really, really critical battle and an amazing moment in the Revolution when we really needed it, and Washington calls together all his key commanders, and he says, get everybody up and get everybody ready to march. We're moving out. And they're all like, George, what are you, crazy, man? We're exhausted. We were exhausted before we started this. We had to cross a river, march through the snow, fight a battle. Everybody's falling asleep in their ranks. We got to chill out. And he says literally word for word, what can you be thinking, that we won the war?
Right.
Like, what are you thinking right now? Like, that was good, but we still got a war to win, man, and we got to move. Like, the Brits are already reacting. They're already sending other troops here. So it's like that, to me, psychologically sums up the whole moment. It's like, okay, you guys, we won, coming down to Pennsylvania. We won Pennsylvania, and I think Pennsylvania, honestly, is what was the deciding factor, right? This is where the Kamala Harris campaign crashed and burned. We stopped her right here. Okay. Now think of all the work we got to do, right? We got so much more work to do. So I get it, you're tired. You just got to get up and move anyway. You cannot afford to sit down and think it's all over. And it is very real. I think your comments and your percentages really bring that home. I've seen that very much recently, where people are like falling back into that mode of, well, somebody else will do it. Somebody else will show up and vote. It's not that important.
Let me ask you something else. We're going to see a lot of dates coming up where patriots are going to feel compelled to go and show up in numbers. What would be your advice to them if they're considering going to one of these events, what they should be looking for, what they should be considering? I mean, we have things going on in our own town, in our own county. We have 2 events coming up. And people are asking, what should I be expecting? What would be the smart thing for them to be
You're
aware
talking
of?
like sort of from a safety and security
Yes.
standpoint? Well, first of all, we're all angry. We're all torqued off. Don't let that boil over, right? Don't, for the love of God, don't let yourself get to the point where you're going to start doing something dumb. Yeah, the guy that's screaming at you probably does deserve to get punched in the mouth and knocked down. That's probably a crime, on a broader issue, it's not going to help the movement. It's not going to help the country, man. That moment of you losing control, screaming, yelling, throwing something is going to get videotaped and plastered all, and that's exactly what the other side wants. So, man, you are helping the cause a lot more by just being restrained and walking away. And you know, as a guy who has lost his temper on some occasions and afterward thought, I'm not sure that was the best thing that I could have done. Like everybody else, sometimes I'm not following my own advice, but the bottom line is walk away and stay cool. And more generally, if you're in a situation and you just can kind of feel this is getting ugly, this looks bad, just pack it up and go home. You know what I mean? If people are starting to throw things and scream and burn things, okay, then let the cops deal with that. Always err on the side of security. Even when I was running operations in the field, with all the training and all the techniques we use, I used to always say to my officers when they're going out on the street, if you're walking into a situation like to meet an asset or you're doing whatever, and just the hair on the back of your neck is standing up and you don't feel good, this doesn't feel right. And I'm not even sure I can quantify right now why it doesn't feel right. I just know. Leave. Walk away. You don't have to worry about justifying that later. Always err on the side of your security and your safety. Just there will be another day. So, and there are going to be these kinds of No Kings events going on all of the time, all over the country. And if you show up to counter protest or whatever, stand on the opposite side of the street waving flags, that's all great. When those idiots start throwing stuff and acting like they're going to take this in a violent direction, don't turn this into Bunker Hill, like we got to fight it out right now. Just leave.
Well, also they're going to twist the story around because there's 2 forms of justice still in this country.
100%. They're going to twist the story. They're going to cherry pick the video they take. You're going to have a verbal confrontation with a guy for 15 minutes, and then he's going to shove you, and you're going to punch him in the mouth.
And God forbid they use AI.
And the only thing that is going to ever be plastered on the internet is the last 5 seconds where you punch the guy in the mouth. And then he's going to lie 100% about everything that transpired. And all of the people standing next to him on their side are going to lie about that. And you're right. And then we can fold in AI where they're going to make it look like you did something you never did entirely. It's not helping us.
Right. All right, well, we really appreciate you coming on the show to share your expertise and your insight, and we'll have you back to talk about some other issues.
And here's the great news. Sam Faddis is also going to be guest speaking at the 7th Annual Rod of Iron Freedom Festival. So,
Absolutely.
folks, that's going to be on October 11th and 12th. Don't miss out. Get to meet Sam and get to hear more from him because he's got a lot to say. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here.
And watch Ann Magazine. Make sure you read it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uncle Trump has one shot, one opportunity to stop the death of America. One moment with the freedom of interest, but with DC with, yo. Vivek's palms are sweaty, six-big job gets heavy. There's curry on his sweater already, mom's tandoori. He's nervous, but DOD is getting order ready to drop bombs, cause he gon' got the fat with Eddie. He goes down, DC crowd cries so loud. He opens his mouth, the words you find just come out. They choking now, we the people joking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, bow. Snap back, DOGE, Lord, they spin gravity. Oprah, bureaucracy, choke, it's so ready. Don't boast, make it look easy. No, he works at it, he knows he'll push him into. Gotta keep him alive. Stand together. Stop World War III. Make America great again.